You can carry everyone's approval and still collapse under it. I've learned that approval doesn't feel light, it feels heavy. It comes dressed as a reward, but it presses down like a burden. Every well done, every nod of approval, every box ticked adds another stone to the pile. You tell yourself it should feel good, that you should be grateful to be seen, to be applauded. But over time, the weight grows suffocating. You walk straighter for others, even as your spine bends beneath it. I remember standing at a gathering once, the room filled with polite smiles and careful words. People praised me for being dependable, respectable, the one who never failed. Their voices rang like applause in my ears, but later that night, sitting alone, the silence was unbearable. Their approval hadn't filled me, it had drained me. I felt like I was carrying a crown too heavy to wear, shining on the outside, but inside a chain. Stephen once told me, "I live afraid of letting people down. I do what's right, what's expected, but half the time I feel wrong inside." Angela admitted, "I chase their praise, their likes, their nods. But the next day I wake emptier than before. Their words reveal what I've felt myself. Approval looks like validation, but it erodes when it becomes your only measure. The suffocation of should creeps in quietly. You wake each day with invisible instructions pressing against your chest. You do what's correct, what's admired, what wins you applause, and yet you collapse in silence under the very approval you thought would set you free. I used to give speeches that pleased everyone but left me hollow. I remember one in particular. The hall was filled with expectant faces. I had prepared carefully, rehearsed each phrase, polished every word so it would sound impressive. As I spoke, heads nodded, smiles spread. When I finished, applause filled the room. People lined up to shake my hand, to tell me how clear, how articulate, how strong the message had been. Outwardly, I smiled. Inwardly, I felt nothing. The echo of their applause was loud, but the void in me was louder. Approval weighs more than rejection. That is the contradiction. Rejection stings, yes, but at least it is honest. Approval that doesn't match your truth feels heavier because it chains you to an image that isn't yours. Stephen once whispered, "I've done everything right, but sometimes I lie awake knowing I've betrayed myself." Angela shared her own version. I post, I share, I perform, and people cheer. But the next morning, I feel like I've given them pieces of me I didn't want to give. Their words echo the same truth I felt that day in the hall. Approval can become a crown so heavy it becomes a chain. I went home from that speech and sat in the dark, my tie still tight around my neck, the echo of clapping still in my ears. And I realized what people give you with one hand, they take with the next. They give you approval, but in doing so, they take your freedom, your authenticity, your own voice. Unless you guard it carefully, you begin living for their praise instead of your truth. That is how should breaks you. Not with cruelty, but with applause. What people give you with one hand, they take with the next. I've lived that reality enough times to trust it. Approval feels like a gift, but often it arrives with invisible strings. You accept the praise and, with it, the pressure to repeat yourself, to maintain the image others admired. Before long, you are no longer living, you are performing. I once came across a line I scribbled into my journal. Praise is a chain disguised as a crown. It unsettled me because I recognized how often I had bowed beneath that crown, smiling while silently weighed down. Applause is loud but short-lived. Truth is quiet, but it stays. Stephen has said, "Have you ever done everything right and still felt wrong inside?" Angela confessed, "I chase their approval, but each time it fades, I feel emptier than before." Their honesty brings me back to what I've come to believe. Validation is not the same as self-worth. Approval is loud, self-worth is lasting. Approval is like a shadow. It follows when you walk in light, but the moment darkness comes, it disappears. If you live for the shadow, you vanish with it. If you live for the light itself, your own truth, you remain. I don't write these reflections as answers. They are reminders. Because even now I feel the pull of should. I still catch myself curving toward praise, seeking approval as if it will settle the ache. But what I've learned is this: approval breaks, authenticity bends. And bending, though harder, keeps you alive. So I pause here, asking myself, asking you, are you living for shadow or for light? Even kings were praised while alive, then forgotten within decades. I remember walking through an ancient courtyard, the stones uneven beneath my feet, the walls weathered by centuries of wind and rain. Once, this place had been filled with trumpets, parades, the roar of approval rising like thunder. Kings had stood here, crowned in gold, surrounded by banners bearing their names, courtiers bowing, citizens cheering. Their faces had been carved into statues, their deeds etched into tablets, their legacies declared immortal. But that day the air was silent, the statues were worn smooth, noses chipped away by time, inscriptions faded until they were illegible. Children ran past without glancing, pigeons roosted in the crevices, the grandeur long gone. No one spoke their names. The trumpets had quieted centuries ago. I placed my hand against one of the stones, rough and cool, and thought, this was once someone's greatest pride. This was once the crown that weighed heavy on a head, and now it is dust. The irony pierced me. What once felt eternal had dissolved into silence. Applause, no matter how loud, always fades. Stephen once admitted, "I do what's correct because I fear disappointing them. But sometimes I wonder if I'm building a life no one will even remember." Angela mirrored the ache in her own way. I chase likes, I chase validation, and the next day I feel emptier than before, like it was smoke I tried to hold. Their voices remind me of those forgotten kings. The people who applauded them are long gone. The validation they lived for turned to ash. As I stood in that courtyard, I realized something sobering. Approval feels like proof in the moment, but time exposes it as a shadow. Approval weighs more than rejection. Stephen knows this weight well. "I've done everything right," he whispered once. "But when I lie down at night, I feel like I've betrayed myself." His voice carried the fatigue of someone who had followed every should until his own voice disappeared. Angela echoed it in her own way. "I chase their applause, but when the cheering stops, I wonder if they ever saw me at all." Both reveal the same paradox. Rejection is sharp but honest. Approval is soft but suffocating, because it chains you to an image that was never fully yours. I've lived both. I've given the speech that earned applause but left me hollow. I've taken the job that impressed others but crushed me inside. Approval was the heaviest crown I've ever worn. It glimmered on the outside. Inside, it bruised me. The detour is not to despise approval. It has its place. Approval tells you how you are seen, but it cannot tell you who you are. The danger comes when we confuse the two, when borrowed validation replaces earned authenticity. I once wrote in my journal, "Approval is like a shadow. It follows when you walk in light and disappear in darkness. Live for light, not shadow." That line has saved me more than once. Shadows shift with every angle. They stretch, shrink, vanish. If you live for them, you live in constant distortion. Light bends, yes, but it remains. Stephen once asked me quietly, "But what if living for myself hurts them?" I told him what I remind myself. Approval fades either way. Better to disappoint for truth than to betray yourself for applause. Angela once sighed, "If I stop chasing their nods, what am I left with?" I said, "Perhaps emptiness at first, but emptiness is soil. It gives space for your own truth to grow." Approval is loud, truth is lasting. The detour is to notice the difference and to choose what will remain when the applause is gone. Approval breaks. Authenticity bends. That line echoes in me tonight as I sit in the stillness of my room. I think of the speeches I gave that drew applause but left me hollow. I think of the kings who once ruled in splendor, now nameless statues crumbling in courtyards no one notices. I think of Stephen, haunted by correctness, afraid of letting others down. I think of Angela, chasing validation that dissolves each morning like mist. Their lives and mine are proof that approval cannot hold us. Only truth can. The pull of approval has a way of dressing itself as safety. It gleams like a crown, but its shine is deceptive. For years I believed praise would anchor me, that nods and recognition would prove my worth. But the truth is sharper. Praise isn't proof. Approval weighs more than rejection because it demands you bend until you forget the shape of yourself. The ache of should doesn't vanish. It returns in moments small and large, in the urge to nod along instead of speaking honestly, in the temptation to take the path that looks respectable but feels hollow in the crown that dazzles until you realize it is forged from chains. And yet, within that ache, another truth emerges. The only crown worth wearing is authenticity itself. I think of shadows on the road. They stretch faithfully when the light is high, but vanish without warning when the light fades. Approval is the same. It follows closely when things are bright, but in the dark hours it disappears. Light is what remains. Light bends, it reveals, it softens what seemed rigid. Light is not earned by applause. It is uncovered by presence. The bend ahead waits beyond my sight, not asking me to prove anything, only to enter. And so I breathe and whisper into the quiet. Maybe I don't need to carry the weight of approval anymore. Maybe the truth itself is enough. And maybe that freedom, bare, unadorned, unseen by some, is the only proof I'll ever need.